What's going on, everyone? Welcome back. Today we've got our Week 5 fantasy football wide receiver starts and sits for every single matchup, so make sure to tune in. If you enjoy, hit that like button, subscribe, give us a follow on Twitter at AllDayPigskin to continue interacting with us there. Let us hear in the comment section. Do you agree, disagree, along with any other questions you guys might have? We will do our best to answer them all. But with that being said, let's get right into it. Today's video is brought to you guys by Birddogs. And look, I know we're all searching for that perfect pair of shorts or pants that offers the best style, the best comfort, the best bang for your buck. Well, guess what? That search is over because Birddogs offers all of that and so much more. If you're looking for shorts, they have a ton of options with activewear, casual wear, or even beachwear. On top of that, their pants have a selection of khakis, joggers, and sweatpants. So what are you waiting for? Regardless of the occasion of the season, get yourself the most stylish, the most comfortable pair of pants with a built-in liner from Birddogs.com. And if you use promo code ADP today, you'll get a free rope hat with your purchase. Again, that's Birddogs.com, code ADP, and you'll get a free rope hat with your purchase. Make sure to check out Birddogs.com, link in the description, and we kick off Week 5 with the Colts at the Broncos on Thursday night. Here from the Colts side of things, I'm targeting Michael Pittman. That's been the case all season long. I don't anticipate that to change unless there's an injury. The guys afterwards are just, either way too inexperienced or way too inconsistent or just hampered by the inconsistencies of Matt Ryan, who right now, at this point in his career, is probably better suited to support mainly one fantasy-relevant weapon, that is Michael Pittman. He's going to be, kind of a high-end wide receiver 2, mid-level wide receiver 2. The targets are there. The talent is there. Again, it's going to depend on the type of game that Matt Ryan has. For the Broncos, Courtland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, I think they're both solid, at least mid-level wide receiver 2s. I'd prefer Courtland Sutton. He's been a little bit more consistent, been getting a little bit more volume. So I have him ranked a little bit higher. But this Colts defense doesn't scare me too much. Also, maybe the pass catchers for the Broncos get a little bit more involved now that Javonte Williams is out for the season. So we'll see. That's something to monitor. A lot of potential injuries here at the running back position. We don't know if Jonathan Taylor is going to play for the Colts. So, maybe, again, the passing attack for the Colts is going to have to be a little bit more of a focal point. So it'll be interesting. But I'm not getting too cute with the other pass catchers here. Alec Pierce, Paris Campbell, like I said, either too inconsistent, too inexperienced. I'm just passing on them. Then Giants at the Packers, London game. For the Packers, I'll start Allen Lazard and Romeo Doubs. So Lazard has been kind of as advertised. We were saying take a chance on him. He's got some really nice upside. He's the most experienced wide receiver. And now that he's a little bit removed from his ankle injury, I think all those things are coming to fruition. But Romeo Doubs is also kind of, these last 2 weeks especially been getting a lot of targets from Aaron Rodgers. To me, the main thing here is this is a competitive game, because if it is, then I think both these guys can be viable flex options. And in fact, Lazard can be a low-end wide receiver too. I do think Dobbs is a little bit riskier, a little bit more boom or bust. That's why I have him in the wide receiver 3 category. Then for the Giants, I am sitting everyone. I said it last week. I'm going to say it again this week and probably every single week moving forward. You've got Daniel Jones hurt. You've got the backups hurt. It's a bad situation. This team runs through Saquon Barkley. The Packers defense in the secondary, it's a decent unit. I just don't like the situation. I'm sitting every Giant wide receiver. Then Lions at the Patriots. So if Amon-Ra St. Brown plays here, then I think he's obviously a very good start. He would be in the high-end wide receiver 2 category. If he doesn't, then Josh Reynolds did get a lot of volume. Now, to be fair, I don't think the Lions are going to score 45 points again this week. It is the Patriots. I think they're a little bit more disciplined, but we'll see. If Amon-Ra doesn't play, Josh Reynolds, to me, is that next guy up, and he would be worthy of flex consideration, kind of a high-end wide receiver 3, low-end wide receiver 2. And if Amon-Ra does play, then I think Reynolds becomes just a little bit too risky. You've still got guys like TJ Hawkinson, Jamal Williams. We'll see what happens with DeAndre Swift. So then I wouldn't get too cute here. For the Patriots, again, another situation where I'm sitting all the Patriot wide receivers. The reason I say this is because the Patriots are now down to their third string quarterback. And even though the Lions defense is absolutely horrid, I think it's so bad that it plays into the hands of what the Patriots want to do offensively, and that's have a game-managing quarterback and just run the football. I anticipate big games from Damian Harris and Ramondre Stevenson, not necessarily the Patriot wide receivers. If there's one that I take a chance on, it's probably Devontae Parker because of what he can do in the red zone. We'll see what happens with Jacoby Myers once he returns. Devontae Parker, to me, I think is going to get less play, so that's also something to monitor. But right now, again, I think this is going to be run heavy from the Patriots, and then the Lions doing their typical thing with these pass catchers. So Patriots wide receivers pass. I'll take a chance on the Lions, though. Then Chargers at the Browns. Look, we still don't know if Keenan Allen is even going to play this week, next week, because he re-aggravated a hamstring injury that caused him to miss several weeks. So it's a tough situation for him. We don't know. If he plays, I'll take a chance on him. The Browns don't scare me right now. And then Mike Williams is kind of the biggest beneficiary in this Keenan Allen absence. He's getting a lot of volume. He's the most experienced wide receiver. Obviously, if Allen doesn't play, I think Williams is a high-end wide receiver too. If Keenan Allen does play, I'd prefer him more so in PPR formats. I still think, that first game back from an injury is a little bit risky. He could be on a snap count, things like that. So I'd kind of have him as a boomer bust wide receiver too. For the Browns, Amari Cooper, yes, I know he pretty much did absolutely nothing this last week. But look, he's still the primary wide receiver for the Browns. I think the Chargers can be had here. Defensively, they have so many injuries, and I do think this could be, that kind of first opponent for the Browns. If you look at the games they've played where they can't just rely on Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, where they're going to have to air it out, and Cooper is the primary guy here. I'm not going to get too crazy with Donovan Peoples-Jones. Yes, I know he had a decent game, but he's too up and down. He's too inconsistent. Same with Josh Palmer. I think the hierarchy for the Chargers goes Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, then Gerald Everett, Austin Eckler's in there, and then Josh Palmer. You need a lot of injuries for Josh Palmer to get consistent volume, so I have him as a sit. Then Texans at the Jaguars. You're going to continue to start Brendan Cooks. He is that low-end, mid-level wide receiver 2 for you. The primary target for the Texans. He's volume-based play. For the Jaguars, Christian Kirk, yes, he had a dud of a week. But if you can trade for him right now, maybe somebody is panicked, do so, because the reason he had a bad week is because the weather conditions that the Jaguars played in. That was pretty unfortunate. So, that entire offensive game plan was out of whack, and Trevor Lawrence didn't have his best game, but Kirk still got a ton of volume. He's still a great start. I think he's a high-end wide receiver too here. He's the preferred wide receiver that I would go with in this game. And then I'm sitting Nico Collins. I'm sitting the rest of the wide receivers behind Christian Kirk for the Jaguars. I just don't think that Nico Collins is as consistent as Cooks. Again, I've said it about Davis Mills. He can't support more than one fantasy-relevant wide receiver. The Jaguars' defense, kind of underrated. And then after, Christian Kirk, Agnew, I wouldn't go chasing the touchdowns. Maybe Zay Jones comes back this week. That's also something to monitor. But to me, it's Kirk and it's Cooks. Afterwards, Falcons at the Bucs. You'll start Drake London. He is getting the volume. That's what you care about. And sooner or later, it's going to pay dividends, especially in PPR formats. Unfortunately, the Buccaneers are a tough out defensively, so I would temper the expectations. Once the Falcons get a consistent quarterback, Drake London is going to be much more of a factor. For the Bucs, Mike Evans, that's easy. And then Chris Godwin, if he plays, I think that, he's the clear-cut number 2 option. And it's Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. Everyone else, there's a tier drop. Following this, yes, that includes Julio Jones and Russell Gage, who I have as sits. If Chris Godwin doesn't play, I wouldn't force one of these guys. I think Leonard Fournette is going to have a big game. I think Mike Evans. I think just too tough to pinpoint Jones or Russell Gage afterwards. Then we go to the Steelers at the Bills. I'll start Deontay Johnson and George Pickens. That might sound a little bit crazy, especially because the Steelers have now moved on from Mitch Trubisky. Kenny Pickett is the starting quarterback, and he looks like garbage, just like Trubisky. And they're playing the Bills. But hear me out. The Bills are probably going to be blowing out the Steelers in this game from start to finish. So what does that mean? Well, the Steelers are going to have to pass the football exclusively. I still think that Deontay Johnson is the top target, but we can't ignore the fact that Kenny Pickett had an eye for George Pickens, and whether that's because of the chemistry they built kind of, in the offseason, during training camp, during preseason, there's something to it. I do think he is now firmly the number 2 wide receiver for the Steelers. And in PPR formats, I would take a chance on him. But again, he is boomer bust. Deontay Johnson, mid-level wide receiver 2. For the Bills, Stephon Diggs, that's easy. He's a wide receiver 1, top 10 wide receiver. And then Gabe Davis. I have him here with an asterisk next to his name. That's, I would start him if the reports you hear leading up to the game are that, he isn't limited with that ankle, he isn't questionable heading into the game, because he's obviously been hampered by that injury these last 2 weeks. And if that's the case again, then Isaiah McKenzie might not be a bad, kind of flyer to take a chance on here. These last 2 weeks, he's had a lot of success. But if Gabe Davis isn't limited, then I do think Isaiah McKenzie not as much of a factor. Same with Chase Claypool. Again, this offense for the Steelers on a normal week is barely going to be able to sustain one fantasy relevant wide receiver. But here, because it's the Bills, and the Bills are probably going to be blowing out the Steelers, I think you can see some value in Pickens, but no thank you to Chase Claypool. Afterwards, Dolphins at the Jets. Tua's not going to play, but Tyreek and Jalen Waddle, I think regardless, are still solid starts. Yes, their upside is lower, but worst case, they're still both wide receiver 2s. For the Jets, this is tough. Zach Wilson came back his first game this season. I've never thought he looked all that great in general, but, he'll probably improve from what we saw this last week. The wide receivers here are a mess. I think Elijah Moore is the most talented one, but Garrett Wilson is the guy that's getting the most volume. I'll still go with that. I think every other wide receiver is too inconsistent. We'll see what happens once Zach Wilson kind of warms up a little bit, gets his feet underneath him, and we have a bigger sample size. I'll go with Wilson, but honestly, I think that all these wide receivers are a little bit boom or bust, and more so in the wide receiver 2 low end / high end wide receiver 3 category. Then Bears at the Vikings. I'm only interested in starting the Vikings wide receivers. Justin Jefferson is an obvious start. He's a top 10 wide receiver. Adam Thielen, he's been getting a lot of volume these last 2 weeks. We'll see if that continues here versus the Bears. I do think he's kind of a boomer bust low-end wide receiver too, because if the game plan, is executed by the Vikings, they're going to go up early. It's going to be the Dalvin Cook show, and they're not going to have to get, the passing attack too involved here. So the volume might not be there for Thielen. So just a heads up. For the Bears, Darnell Mooney finally had his best game of the season, but it wasn't all that great. And here, this passing attack for the Bears is broken. Justin Fields doesn't look like a good quarterback. Whether it's him, whether it's the offensive system, whether it's the coaching, just a lot of question marks here. I'm only interested in the rushers for the Chicago Bears, so I'm sitting Mooney. Then Titans at the Commanders. I'll take a chance on Curtis Samuel and Terry McLaurin. Yes, Carson Wentz has been extremely disappointing, but Samuel's still getting the volume. McLaurin as well, not as much as we'd like to see. I think Samuel is a low to mid-level wide receiver 2. McLaurin is a wide receiver 3. I do think it's a favorable matchup, so I would start both of them. Jahan Dotson is hurt as well. And then for the Titans, look, Treylon Burks is hurt, so some people might be going with Robert Woods here, but I wouldn't force it. Josh Gordon is being elevated. Not that really matters, but he is kind of a big name, so I decided to list him here on the sits. I still think that this Commanders defense is so bad that the Titans are just going to do their thing. That's run the football with Derrick Henry, and then neither of these guys are going to get too much volume. Just not an alpha guy on this Titans offense in terms of wide receivers. So I just don't think the upside for either one of these guys is all that big. So I'm sitting them all here. Then Seahawks at the Saints. I'll start Metcalf. I'll start Tyler Lockett. I think the Seahawks are going to have to air out the football here. I don't expect another huge game from Rashad Penny. I think that's, circumstantial when you look at the opponent in the Detroit Lions. The Saints defense, much better. I think Metcalf and Lockett are in the low-end wide receiver 2 category here. For the Saints, Chris Olave, Michael Thomas, if Michael Thomas plays, that is. I wouldn't get too cute with Jarvis Landry or Marquez Callaway. Yes, I know the Seahawks defense just gave up 45 points to the Lions. But to me, the top 2 guys are Olave and MT. And then honestly, if Alvin Kamara plays, he should be heavily involved here. We'll see, though. We're going to have to wait until further into the week. Then 49ers at the Panthers. Deebo Samuel, Brendan Ayuk, both great plays. The reason for that is because even though George Kittle is elite, he's pretty much being used as a tackle right now while there's injuries to that offensive line. So Samuel and Brendan Ayuk, I think, are both high-end wide receiver 2 plays. The Panthers, they're trash. Nothing else really to say here. For Carolina, DJ Moore, but even that's if you're desperate. This 49ers defense is elite. Baker Mayfield is worse than trash. I don't know what else to say here. In PPR formats, that's the only place I'd be taking a chance on DJ Moore because of the volume, because you expect the Panthers are going to have to throw a bunch. But since you don't trust the quarterback worth a damn, how much does that really mean? I'm going to go for talent with DJ Moore ahead of Robbie Anderson. But again, it's going to be boom or bust here because is it going to be quality in terms of the targets? Touchdown upside, probably not going to be there. So keep all that in mind. To me, Moore is a boom or bust wide receiver, low-end wide receiver 2, high-end wide receiver 3. Then Eagles at the Cardinals. I'll start A.J. Brown. I'll start Devonta Smith. This Cardinals defense doesn't scare me one bit, and I think the Eagles can put up a lot of points on them. I think A.J. Brown is a mid-level wide receiver 1. Devonta Smith, more of a boom or bust low-end wide receiver 2. And then for the Cardinals, Marquise Brown, he's been as advertised, getting a bunch of volume. That's what we were hoping to see. We'll see if that continues once Hopkins returns. But either way, I think Brown is a high-end wide receiver too. Then I wouldn't get too cute with any of the other Cardinal wide receivers. Rondell Moore, Dortch, doesn't matter. I'm sitting all the other wide receivers. Afterwards, Cowboys at the Rams. I'm starting the 2 top wide receivers here. That's CeeDee Lamb for the Cowboys, then Cooper Kupp. For the Cowboys, Noah Brown has also been getting a decent amount of targets, but with Michael Gallup getting healthier and healthier every week, I think he's going to get more and more involved. I just think that Brown is going to be a little bit too boom or bust, so I'm sitting him here. Same with Michael Gallup. I think going to be a lot of vulturing here from Noah Brown and Gallup. And then for the Rams, hand up, Allen Robinson's probably been one of our biggest misses this season. He's been absolutely atrocious. I don't know whether it's him. I don't know whether it's the utilization by the Rams. But, basically what we hoped Allen Robinson would be, it's Tyler Higbee, the tight end for the Rams. That's how he's been utilized. So Robinson, dare I say, he's almost droppable the way he's been playing so far to kick off the season. Then Bengals at the Ravens. You start Jamar Chase, you start T. Higgins. I think that, they both have, mid-level wide receiver 1 upside here. For the Ravens, Devin Duvernay, I think, can be a sneaky play this week for a couple of reasons. I think that Rashad Bateman has been a little bit inconsistent. I think the wide receivers for the Baltimore Ravens in general just aren't going to get a lot of volume other than, Mark Andrews at tight end. And Bateman got nicked up last week. We'll see what happens, but I wouldn't be shocked if he's limited if he does play. So Duvernay could very well be the number 1 wide receiver for the team. And I take a dart throw on him. I think he could be a solid low-end wide receiver too. And then I'd be benching Tyler Boyd. Again, I think he's just the odd man out. Rashad Bateman, I think, even if he does play, he's going to be hampered by his injury. Less than 100%, I am sitting him in this game. Then Raiders at the Chiefs. I'll start Devontae Adams. That's pretty easy. Top 10 wide receiver in a game that the Raiders should have to throw a bunch to keep up with the Chiefs. And then if Renfrow comes back from his concussion, I think he can be a sneaky play as well. Again, it won't just be able to be Devontae Adams. Josh Jacobs, even though he had an elite game on the ground, I think the Raiders are going to have to pass the football here. And if Renfrow doesn't play, Matt Collins could be in for another solid start here. Yes, he disappointed last week compared to the week prior, but versus the Chiefs, again, the Raiders are going to have to air it out. He could be a flyer, a boom or bust wide receiver 3. For the Chiefs, I think Juju Smith-Schuster, I almost wanted to list him as a start, but he's getting the targets, so you take a chance on him, primarily in PPR formats. Let me make that clear. But I think he's in the wide receiver 3 category. I really do. It's Travis Kelce, it's Clyde Edwards-Helaire here, and Juju Smith-Schuster just isn't being utilized like we were hoping to see, not being utilized downfield. And just in these short dink and dump passes, not consistently either. So just keep all of that in mind here. I think Juju is a wide receiver 3. But with that, we wrap up our Week 5 fantasy football wide receiver starts and sits for every single matchup. If you guys enjoyed, hit that like button, subscribe, give us a follow on Twitter at AllDayPigskin. Again, make sure to let us hear it in the comment section. Do you agree, disagree? If you have any other questions, we will do our best to answer them as well. But in the meantime, we'll see you guys in future videos.